On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we will preview Super Bowl 53 with the Ringers, Danny Kelly. And that's about it. It's just the Super Bowl this week.
One game left.
Hello and welcome to this week's NESN Patriots podcast. I am Doug Kai, joined as always by Zach Cox. We are also joined by the Ringers, Danny Kelly. Danny, I'll start with you since you're our guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing well, Zach. How are you doing?
Fantastic. We're here on Radio Row in Atlanta. This is my third Super Bowl that I've covered now, and I always get a little bit kind of surprised at just the scope of it. Even just this building. This might be the largest building I've ever been in my entire life. You know what I mean? The Georgia World Congress
Center. It takes you like 20
Center.
minutes to walk through a building.
Oh, it's incredible. It's just crazy how big of a production this thing is for the entire week. Forget the game itself.
I don't know if you guys have been over to NFL Experience yet, but the other day I started to go through, and that's like where all they have the drills for the kids and everything. Like, I spent like 5 minutes walking through. It was like, I can't see the end of this yet. I have to turn around. This is horrible.
It's overwhelming.
So I'm probably not going to see that. Danny and I also spent like 25 minutes walking through Atlanta in like the 30-degree cold last night. So that was fun too.
Yeah, I was under the impression we were walking to a car, but there was no car involved. So we ended up just walking halfway across the downtown, and it was frigid. But yeah, it was fun anyway.
Yeah, it was a good time. So Super Bowl 53, that's obviously what we're really here for. New England Patriots, Los Angeles Rams. We're bringing in Danny Kelly. I don't know if he's an expert on the NFC West, but he's certainly more aware of the NFC West than the rest of us are, because he used to cover the Seattle Seahawks. Yep. Now he covers kind of the entire league for the Ringers. So I think that I might have said this on last week's podcast, but if I'm breaking this game down to its most basic form, I think the Rams are not as good of a team as the Chiefs. And the Patriots just beat the Chiefs on the road in Arrowhead Stadium. So, like, that says the Patriots should beat the Rams this week. Of course, it's not always that simple. And that would be a very uninteresting podcast if we just left it there.
Sure.
But no, I mean, I think that's why the Patriots, to me, are favored in this game, personally.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way that the Patriots have dealt with pressure is just incredible in the playoffs. I mean, the fact that they've played two of the best pass rushing teams in the NFL, and the Chiefs and Chargers, and completely neutralized both of those pass rush groups it's a perfect testament to what Bill Belichick does as a coach. Like, just out-schemes, out-coaches other teams. They've got a great offensive line that kind of has blossomed and come together at the right time. They're just playing at a high level. I wrote about that this week, actually, just how they were able to mix their run game with the quick passing attack, keep Brady clean the whole time. Just really incredible. I think that, to me, is like, again, in this week, is the key to the game. Is, are they going to be able to do that against the Rams? Are they going to go 3 in a row, neutralizing these top pass rushing teams? I guess, like, my impression is it seems like they should be able to, just based on what they've done the last 2 weeks. But the biggest, I guess, X factor or whatever is the fact that the Rams have the best interior pass rushing duo in the NFL in Sue and Donald, and it's just a different dynamic than, I guess, what they've faced in the last 2 weeks. So for me, that's like the big thing is, like, are they going to be able to kind of take care of Sue and Donald, or at least mitigate them? Because you're not going to be able, it's like Jordan, you can't stop them, you can just kind of hope to contain them. To me, that is kind of the big thing, because if Patriots can do that, if they can do the thing where they just play like 90-something like plays, keep the ball out of the Rams' hands, because that's obviously still a very good offense.
For sure.
I think that, to me, is like the game plan, but I tend to lean towards the Patriots a little bit just because of what they've done the last 2 weeks in terms of, or I guess last 2 games, in terms of, just game planning so well against 2 really good teams.
I think the Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh factor is probably the biggest, like you said, it's probably the biggest sort of matchup to watch in this game, I guess you could say, because the Patriots offensive line and the Patriots kind of entire trenches operation, I guess you could call it, between the offensive line, Tom Brady getting the ball out quickly, James Devlin blocking, Rob Gronkowski blocking, Dwayne Allen blocking, that whole kind of situation has been fantastic throughout the playoffs. And both in the run game, they're averaging something like 150 yards per game over the last 4 weeks. and
8 touchdowns or something between Sony and
8 touchdowns. The whole O-line is they've stopped kind of the penalty issues they had a little bit earlier this season. And then in the passing game, Tom Brady hasn't been sacked in the playoffs.
Right.
I believe he's been hit 3 times. He's been pressured something like 12 times in 2 games against 2 teams that, like you mentioned, had some of the best edge rushers in the entire NFL.
I mean, I thought they were going to do way more. I honestly did. So honestly, kind of crazy.
We talked about this on the podcast a couple weeks ago. It seems like every week when the Patriots play Von Miller or any kind of supreme kind of high-end edge rusher like the guys I've seen in recent weeks with Dee Ford and Justin Houston and Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa, we hype it up all week, and they don't tend to be all that productive against the Patriots.
It's making me look bad. Stop doing that.
The difference this week is that, as you mentioned, the Rams get that pass rush up the middle for the most part. With Aaron Donald's he's an absolute freak. It's incredible watching him play football.
Did you guys see that picture of him?
Yeah.
Just muscles on muscles.
Seeing him at Media Day, actually, was the first time I had seen him in person. And
he's like a boulder.
He reminded me of seeing James Harrison for the first time last year when he came to the Patriots, because he's not a tall guy.
Right.
He's shorter than me. He's got to be, what is he, 5'10", something like that,
like
right around 6
foot
feet
or something.
6'1".
But he's just as wide as a Mack truck. It's incredible. And just the way that he plays, and Ndamukong Suh probably isn't at the level he was at a couple of years ago, but he's still a very good player in there too. The fact that the Rams can get that pressure right up the middle, it's much harder to kind of neutralize that than it is kind of having the edge rusher take a couple seconds to come around that corner. And it's been the cliche for years that the way to beat Tom Brady is to pressure him up the middle.
Right.
It's a cliche for a reason, because sometimes it does kind of work. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the one amazing thing about Aaron Donald too is just looking at him, like, you could guess that he could play any number of like 10 positions, just like based on how compact he is. Like,
what
you
if
could
he
be like, oh, that guy's a line. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think they use Dominique Easley at outside linebacker. They could probably use Aaron Donald at outside linebacker. He's definitely more athletic than Dominique Easley. I mean, that's like almost what he looks like. He could be a running back. He'd probably be a pretty nasty running back. But no, I mean, the Patriots' interior offensive line has done a really good job this year. They all know each other very well, too. That's another element that's in play a little bit, the continuity. I mean, like, David Andrews, Shaq Mason, and Joe Thuney have basically played every snap together for the last 3 years. Shaq Mason and David Andrews have had some minor injuries the last couple of years, but there's a ton of continuity there, and they've really been playing better and better as the year's gone along. I think one sort of interesting thing about the Rams defense in general is that they're a little bit undersized. They don't have that 330-pound nose tackle. And Ndamukong Suh is their bigger defensive tackle. Their linebackers are on the smaller side. Their edge rushers are on the smaller side. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots did come out similarly to how they did and try to run on them. Just try to bulldoze them with James Devlin and Dwayne Allen and Rob Gronkowski. And I mean, you can't do that to Aaron Donald. He's going to cause disruption one way or the other. But maybe even make him over pursue a little bit and then run through that gap. Just like make the disruption. Basically. And I do think that to some degree they can run power on them a little bit in this game, and I think that's probably what they're going to try to do at first.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams' run D this whole season has been pretty bad. It's been one of the worst units, I guess, in terms of the NFL.
Last in the league in yards per carry.
Yeah, and so, but they've kind of gotten better the last 2 games. In fact, I think they've given up fewer than 100 yards in the last 2 games combined. And that's against, they went up against the Saints, who have a very good run game and all that. So, obviously it helps to be playing well at the right time of the year. But overall, that run group has been a sort of a liability for them. So I definitely see that. I was listening to a podcast with Greg Cosell, the Ross Tucker podcast, the other day, and he was talking about how just on the Patriots' first drive against the Chiefs, was a 15-play drive. They mixed in, they had 7 first down runs, and every run was a different style or scheme of run.
That's pretty crazy.
Out of different personnel.
Yeah.
So, imagine trying to prepare for that, where you're, having to figure out which guys, where you're, shading and all that stuff. There's so many permutations of what they can do with their offense. And it's a credit, again, to, Belichick and Dante Scarnecchia for preparing that offensive line to run so many different schemes and execute it at a high level.
Right.
I think that's always why the Patriots are always in the freaking Super Bowl.
Right.
Because they can execute so much better than every other team.
Yeah.
And so I think, I'm definitely with you. I think they're going to try and run. I think they're going to try and control the clock. I mean, it's like you said, it's all cliches, but it's true. They're going to try and do that because, like I said, if you want to beat the Rams, keep the ball out of that offense's hands.
I think that one interesting thing while we're on the Rams defense is they've basically played sides this season. We keep Talib playing, was it on the right or left side?
I believe he's on the left side. It's something like 93% of the snaps this season.
And then that means that Marcus Peters is on the other side. I'm kind of interested to see if the Patriots do try to go after Marcus Peters just because he hasn't had a very good season for the Rams so far. At the same time, when the Patriots have gone against Marcus Peters when he was on the Chiefs in the past, Tom Brady really didn't try to test him. I think that part of that is just that Marcus Peters is such a playmaker that they want to avoid mistakes at all costs. And, that might be a situation where you attack Marcus Peters when you get down a little bit, but you don't want him grabbing an interception. He's always been a player with great ball skills going back to college. I'm a UW fan, so, I've been watching him for years at this point. And, he certainly wasn't as good this year, but, looking back on the Titans game this year, Malcolm Butler had a really bad first half of the season, and Tom Brady basically didn't target him all game. So it's not as if you look at a cornerback and say, okay, this guy's giving up a ton of yards, the Patriots are going to go after him. That's not always the case with them. So, at the same time, Aqib Talib is on the other side. You probably don't want to go after him much either. So it might be Nickel Roby-Coleman, especially after the comments that he made about Tom Brady this week about how he's, getting older and everything, aging.
Why would you do that?
And it's going to be, he's going to be on Julian Edelman too. So, Julian Edelman basically becomes a completely different player in the postseason. Averages eight catches and 96 yards per game over the last 5 or 6 seasons, basically since he's become a regular starter. And I think that is maybe how you attack them, with Rob Gronkowski on those linebackers, and then with Julian Edelman on Nickel Roby-Coleman.
And I think that's also plays into their strategy of getting the ball out fast, right? So they had, I think in the Chargers game, that they got it out average of 2.3 seconds per play. And then last week, or against the Chiefs, it was 2.5, but it was both tops in the what's left of the NFL. And those quick plays, like just do quick play actions, things over the middle, really quick slants, get the slot receiver out there. I think that's going to play into their strategy too. So I definitely agree. I think the Rams linebacker core isn't necessarily super good in coverage. So I definitely think that's going to be a game plan. Just try and get the ball out fast, keep Brady clean.
Yeah, it seems like another Julian Edelman game in this game. I know Nickel Roby-Coleman has been playing pretty well.
He's a
good slot corner.
He's a good slot guy. He might not be the slot god as he calls himself, but he's a solid player. But I don't know, Julian.
And
Edelman,
his name's Nickel. He kind of was like meant for it.
Julian Edelman's just been playing at such a high level in this postseason, and really in every postseason. I know there's been the fact that he's even that is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer is even like a question that is being debated. Just kind of goes to show how ridiculously productive he's been in the postseason. And I don't know, it seems like this can be another Julian Edelman game. I'm also interested to see if we get some kind of Rob Gronkowski game in this game, because like you said, the Rams linebackers not great in coverage there. He's probably going to spend most of the game on either a linebacker or John Johnson, their strong safety. I'm not exactly sure how they'll kind of try to combat Rob Gronkowski in this game, but Gronkowski has looked significantly better this postseason than he did for really the entire regular season. This was the worst Rob Gronkowski season of his career, not including those injury-shortened ones. He really just looked kind of old and slow for a lot of the year. I know the Patriots aren't gonna be happy about hearing that, but that's what Rob Gronkowski looked like. But recently, it seems like, I don't know if he's gotten healthier or if he's just kind of found his groove again. But these last 2 weeks, like he was an animal in the run blocking game against the Chargers, and then last week he made a couple great catches against the Chiefs, including that big 3rd and 10 late in the game. I don't know. I think this could be a throwback game for Rob Gronkowski. Then he kind of rides off into the sunset.
You've got all those conspiracies about was Belichick saving Gronkowski for the playoffs? And it is a funny thing to say and talk about, but in the NBA, players actually do kind of save themselves for the playoffs, or to some degree. I think
Brady was saving himself.
That's what I was about to say. I don't think it's ridiculous to think that Brady and maybe even Gronk were kind of saving themselves to a certain degree for the playoffs, because you're going to win the AFC in the AFC East. You know that you're going to make the playoffs one way or the other, and maybe you want the 1 seed, maybe obviously you want the 1 seed, but if you can be healthy and effective in the playoffs, even if you don't have the best regular season, that's probably more valuable than getting that number 1 seed or going 16-0 or 14-2 or whatever it's going to be.
I was listening to the Mina Kimes podcast the other day. Andrew Hawkins was on it. He was briefly with the Patriots. He was talking about how literally everything the Patriots do in practice, I'm probably not telling you guys anything, but literally everything they do in practice is for January in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like for hosting a game or playing in the playoffs in January. So everything they do is that preparation. So honestly, I mean, I could see like how they're playing the long game. That really this is what counts, right?
Right.
They're no strangers to this situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Andrew Hawkins was with the Patriots in training camp, so that just goes to show how early that preparation starts.
Yeah, he was talking about how he had his hands in his pockets, and they're like, "Whoa, you don't do that." And it's like he's like, "We're playing in January, buddy." Like that's the point. So, anyways, that was a great interview, by the way. And plus, but yeah, so I can definitely see how sort of the long game is just like what really matters is playing in January.
For sure. Let's go over to the offensive side of the ball for the Rams, which means the defensive side of the ball for the Patriots. We were talking about this before the podcast, how you made the point, Danny, how Patriots always kind of try to take away the opposing team's number one weapon. And in this game, there's not really that obvious guy. It would have been Todd Gurley.
A month ago, yeah.
Right, exactly. It would have been obvious, really.
Right.
But then he got hurt. He really hasn't been as effective, and C.J. Anderson has stepped up. And then on the other side of the ball, I think that the Rams' passing attack at least took a considerable hit when Cooper Kupp went down because Jared Goff was a much better quarterback statistically before Cooper Kupp went down. Josh Reynolds is fine, but he's not Cooper Kupp, and then they had to shift things around where Robert Woods is now in the slot. It's just not really an ideal situation. The biggest name among the receiver corps is Brandon Cooks, but the Patriots kind of know that he's sort of a one-dimensional wide receiver, and we saw that all of last year. I think that, there were really high hopes for Brandon Cooks last year, given his testing numbers, given his size, maybe he could contribute in the slot a little bit, but he didn't, and he's not a great route runner. He's not great on short passes. He's not great at picking up yards after the catch. He's a great deep ball receiver.
Right.
And, I mean, that's not all he does, but that's really what he does best. So I think, in my opinion, what the Patriots do in this game is they load up against the run, try to stop Todd Gurley and C.J. Anderson, and then trust their secondary, at least to a certain point, to stop Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks and Todd Gurley out of the backfield. I don't think they're that worried about the tight ends in there. So it's really going to come down to Stephon Gilmore, Jason McCourty, and J.C. Jackson stopping those wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like East Coast bias on my part, but I think the Chiefs' kind of collection of weapons that we saw 2 weeks ago seems to be kind of, on paper, significantly better than, or taking out the running backs, the wide receivers and tight ends. I think the Chiefs group seems significantly better than the one that the Patriots are going to see this weekend. Now, I haven't watched a ton of the Rams all season. I wasn't watching every Robert Woods snap. Maybe I'm still kind of biased because he was kind of a math player for Buffalo.
I mean,
he was more productive than Brandon Cooks this season.
Did you hear he's the best receiver in the NFL?
Did he say that?
No, that was Aikman said that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That was amazing. I forgot about that.
So he's the best receiver in the NFL.
But it seems like if the Patriots were able to do what they did against the Chiefs 2 weeks ago, where basically Tyreek Hill was a non-factor in that game except for the 142-yard catch he had early. Travis Kelce had a touchdown, drew a pass interference, but other than that, he finished with 3 catches for 23 yards, I think.
Sammy Watkins is the one that went off, but that was really, he had Stephon Gilmore allowed a big play, and then he had some big catches against J.C. Jackson late. But
if the Patriots are able to do that against probably the most talented kind of array of weapons in the NFL, I'm confident that they can do the same again against this Rams team. And Patriots secondary overall has been very good this season. I know their safety play was a little bit shaky early in the year against tight ends. Eric Ebron really beat them up in Week 5. They had some issues against Trey Burton.
Touchdown maker.
That was the kind of the peak of the Eric Ebron resurgence was back then against the Patriots. But overall, for the last 2 months or so of the season, the whole secondary has been fantastic. Their cornerback group is very, very deep, especially with J.C. Jackson kind of emerging late in the year. So I don't know. This is kind of, it's obviously a talented offense, but I think the Patriots kind of are well set up to stop that, at least from a passing perspective.
To me, it's a very fascinating matchup because clearly the Rams have very good players. I think the strength of their offense, though, it's the scheme. It's an amazing scheme that
it's incredible.
Everyone on the offense, obviously you spoke a little bit about Cooks' limitations, but they can interchange guys in almost all their spots on offense. Whether that's tight ends or running, receivers are very good at blocking. They can do all their run game stuff out of 11 personnel because their receivers are capable blockers. They can get in there and kind of go inside and block on defensive ends or crack back or whatever. So what I see is kind of it's really Belichick against McVay to me, more than the players against each other, because it's just going to be so fascinating to see how how they game plan to take away what has been an incredibly efficient scheme. I mean, the way that they mix misdirection and play action, and they do everything out of 11 personnel. They've been playing 12 personnel with 2 tight ends a little bit more lately, but still, like, the basis and the foundation of their offense is that 3 receiver set, and they can do kind of like everything they want out of it. I'm just like really excited to see kind of how the Patriots deal with that, because I mean, the whole scheme is designed to mess with defensive players' keys and reads, and that's attacking a disciplined defense, and the Patriots are very disciplined, and so I don't know. To me, it's just a fascinating matchup, and I have no idea how it's going to go just based on that, but I'm sure that Belichick's going to have a very good plan to deal with it.
It's such an intriguing offense to watch, too. Just seeing them, especially kind of the condensed formations that they run. They basically run a jumbo 3 wide receiver set, which is really strange. You look at it, at first glance, it's like, oh, cool, they must have 2 tight ends and a fullback in here. You're like, oh no, that's Robert Woods, that's Brandon Cooks. He just happens to be standing right next to the offensive tackle. And that messes with opposing defenses, with Stephon Gilmore basically lining up as a box safety to try to cover one of those receivers. It's just so different from kind of how every other or most other offenses in this league are run.
I think at least, as far as coverage goes, Patriots I think they ran the most man coverage in the NFL this year. And I was actually kind of talking to them about that this week, and what Devin McCourty said was that we feel like we have to run man coverage just because quarterbacks are so smart. Quarterbacks can pick apart zones, and you see that every week with Tom Brady. Like the Los Angeles Chargers tried to run their cover three, and it was just it was ridiculous how easy Tom Brady was picking that apart. So when McCourty first came in the league, the Patriots ran a lot of cover 2. Then they really started getting some better man cornerbacks with Aqib Talib and Darrelle Revis, Malcolm Butler, and now Stephon Gilmore, and they've been able to run a lot more man coverage. But the Patriots also have been using Stephon Gilmore shadowing a team's really best tall receiver for the most part this season. It changed up a little bit against the Steelers when he covered Antonio Brown and J.C. Jackson covered Juju Smith-Schuster, and no one could have guessed how they were going to cover the Chiefs. It was Stephon Gilmore on Sammy Watkins, which made sense, but then it was J.C. Jackson on Travis Kelce, and Jonathan Jones, and Jonathan Jones and Keon Cross, and their 2 fastest cornerbacks on Tyreek Hill, which was that was kind of mind-blowing to me that they would use Jonathan Jones, who really has not played much all season since J.C. Jackson emerged, on a guy like Tyreek Hill. So I'm really curious to see how they do it this week. I would say that my best guess is they put Stephon Gilmore on Brandon Cooks, if only because they have that matchup from last year in practice. He might have some knowledge on him. But, I mean, J.C. Jackson could probably cover Brandon Cooks, too. J.C. Jackson might be the faster of the 2 guys. I've written probably far too many stories on J.C. Jackson this year, but Stephon Gilmore told J.C. Jackson's old, I think, defensive backs coach that J.C. Jackson is the most athletic player he's ever played across.
Wow.
Which is a pretty crazy thing to say. I mean, he's played across from Malcolm Butler and Ronald Darby and Aaron Williams and all sorts of guys. So J.C. Jackson is really talented. He struggled against Travis Kelce. He struggled against Sammy Watkins. He was fantastic during the regular season. So it really also just comes down to his play in this game, too, I think. If he can play like he did during the regular season, I think the Patriots defense can stop this offense. But if he struggles with penalties or big plays, then the Rams could start to do some stuff against Patriots defense.
Definitely his toughest game or at least his toughest game since he became kind of a starter and a key part of this defense last week against the Chiefs. He was really kind of the weak spot of that Patriots secondary, which is not something we've said much at all in the last couple of weeks.
Patriots run defense definitely struggled in the last half of the season. But that was when they were running a lot of dime, and they were almost conceding.
They were they had 1 or 2 big guys active or something like that.
Yeah, Danny Shelton wasn't playing. They had Adam Butler, who's kind of an undersized defensive tackle, playing in the middle. So, but the Patriots have proven over the last couple of weeks that when they want to stop the run, they can at least be pretty effective against it. The Chiefs and Chargers basically did nothing against them, but this might be kind of a whole different animal with Todd Gurley and C.J. Anderson running at them. So definitely going to have to be a big game from Trey Flowers. It might be a game where they want to activate Danny Shelton. That's been one that's kind of been up in the air. But, I mean, I could see, especially if the Rams get out to an early lead, the running game for the Rams could be a problem in this game.
I think it's the tough part about defending the Rams, and this kind of just speaks to their versatility, is they just make you defend every inch of the field. Because they can run outside zone, they can run the pitch. They're very good at that. Todd Gurley's very good at that. They kind of added the inside zone with C.J. Anderson. He's very good, kind of pounding it up the middle. So that combination is tough to stop because you got guys that are eager to get outside, and then there's a cutback lane and all that. It's just tough. And so, I mean, these two teams are both extremely good at executing. That's like why they're in the Super Bowl.
Right.
And so, again, it just comes back to it's going to be such a fun matchup because you're seeing two very good, disciplined teams who can execute, and like who is going to out-execute the other is kind of the deal. And so it's like, it's going to be really fun to watch. I just think, I think people are sleeping on the Rams offense a little bit these days just because they've kind of struggled at times over the last like 2 months or so, a month or whatever. But I mean, overall, this was like a historic offensive team for like half the season. They're just amazing. Clearly, they're going to be missing Cooper Kupp, but they just have so many weapons, and I just think, do you guys think it has potential to turn into like a high-scoring game, or do you think it's going to be?
I think it does. I think it might not be quite as high-scoring as Patriots Chiefs, or Chiefs Rams, or even last year's Super Bowl. But no, I don't think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think that both teams will kind of be able to move the ball on one another in this one.
Yeah, I get the sense of like a high 20s, low 30s kind of thing. Not a real grinded out game, but the fact that both of these teams do run the ball so well, it might be one where kind of the clock moves a little bit more quickly than it otherwise would.
I don't spend a lot of time talking or thinking about special teams personally, which is weird for someone who covers a Bill Belichick team.
Yeah.
But I think we do kind of have to touch on Johnny Hekker a little bit in this game.
Weapon.
Just because Bill Belichick is obsessed with him, and Johnny Hekker might need like a restraining order against him at some point. But Johnny Hekker is, if he's not the best punter in the NFL, then the Seahawks punter probably is.
Right.
But it's really between those two guys. But the thing that Johnny Hekker adds is that he can actually throw the ball pretty well. He was a high school quarterback. Led his team to a state championship game, which they lost, I guess. That was in your native Washington. My native Washington, too. I was born in Washington.
Nice.
He threw a fake punt last week against the Saints. He's 11 for 19 in his career. So, I mean, that adds to his weaponness or weaponry or whatever the adjective there would be for that.
So I covered the Seahawks for a long time. I'm a Seahawks fan. So coming up, watching the Rams over the last like 5-7 years, every time the Rams go to punt, I am convinced that they're going to fake it. Like they're so good at faking on special teams. I mean, it was Jeff Fisher before, but they loved doing that to the Seahawks. It was just like the bane of our existence for so long. I think that's an added sort of weapon for them. Not to use the weapon again, but it really is like it's an added benefit that they have that at their disposal. It's just something else that the Patriots are going to have to prepare for, and it just makes them they're just good in all three areas. And so I think that 57-yard kick, that Zerline kick too, like
insane.
That thing would have been, I think it would have been good from 80 yards. It was insane. It was like going up still when it went through.
Seriously.
So their special teams groups could be a big factor in this game, and anytime we're talking about the Patriots, we know that special teams are huge for them too. So again, it's all three phases are going to be pretty fascinating to watch. Yeah,
this is going to be a good game for people who are into the kicking game.
Yeah,
because like you mentioned Hekker, you mentioned Zerline, John Fossil is one of the better special teams coaches in the NFL over there in Los Angeles. And then the Patriots they were weirdly terrible in special teams for the first half of this season. Normally they're kind of up near the top of the league and everything, but they were dead last in punt return yards allowed through something like 8 or 9 weeks. They were near the bottom in kickoff return yards allowed. They've actually been a lot better lately. They added Albert McClellan, Ramon Humber midway through the season, kind of guys that most fans aren't too familiar with, but guys who really kind of stabilized those units. And Albert McClellan has
grizzled special teams linebackers.
Grizzled is a good word for Albert McClellan. He's got gray in his beard and everything, kind of a scary looking guy. But he's blocked a couple of kicks too. He's forced or recovered a fumble on a punt. So they're kind of back to their normal Patriot levels of special teams prowess. So I think that'll definitely be a factor in this game too.
Just the last thing here, and you've touched on it quite a bit, but the Sean McVay, Bill Belichick angle is just an interesting one because it's the old guard versus the new guard, and a lot of people would probably consider these to be the best two head coaches in the NFL, right?
They're up there for sure.
Up there. I don't know really who else would be in that group.
I guess if you count Andy Reid, you kind of have to, other than sort of the playoff legacy of his. But they're definitely in the top 5, top 3. I know Belichick is number 1 by far,
Right.
but like a lot of people think that McVay is kind of the next big thing, and the way he runs his team. I was talking about this to Mays the other day. Like, it's not just his scheme that makes McVay an amazing head coach. I mean, that's a huge part of it,
Right.
but his ability to delegate, like he hired Wade Phillips to run his defense, gave him basically full control of that. You're hiring a legendary coach to do that. I think that shows foresight. He brought in some veterans like Andrew Whitworth to come help try and like lead the team. You're bringing in a lot of big personalities, Sue and Peters and all these guys. You need like a strong base, and like as a 33-year-old guy in a locker room of alphas, like that's really impressive to me, that he's able to sort of lead these guys, and they all respect him clearly, or at least it seems that way. I don't talk to him individually, but like he has the team's respect for sure.
Oh, for sure.
And so to me, that's like the most impressive thing. I mean, like 33-year-old guy running a team like that is really, really impressive. I mean, anybody running a team like that is, but
absolutely.
Yeah,
maturity and leadership and confidence that he has as such a young guy, and such an inexperienced guy too. Relatively, I mean, he's only been an NFL coach for 6-7 years, and to already be at this point where he has the kind of total respect of, like you said, in a locker room of alphas, I mean, guys like Aqib Talib and guys who have been in the NFL forever and have been kind of big, definitely have some big personalities in there. It's remarkable.
How do you balance that?
I have no idea. Like when we saw all the kind of signings and trades they made last offseason, we're like, this kind of has a potential to be a disaster.
Totally. I thought there was a very strong implosion factor or whatever. It was one of those things where like you could see it going one of two ways. It's going to go spectacularly, which it clearly has, or just completely blow up in their faces. But again, credit to McVay for being able to delegate, figure out a way to lead these guys when I think it's the way he talks to them. It's like it's a mutual respect type thing. He's not trying to big time anybody, and I think that's huge because if you're literally older than your head coach and he's trying to big time you, imagine how that would be.
Oh, for sure.
So
Whitworth is older than him. I think Aqib Talib might be either the same age or older than him. There's like quite a few guys on that team who are either right around the same age or older than their head coach. And I mean, Belichick's been coaching for 43 years. Sean McVay is only 33 years old.
I know, that's great.
Belichick's son, who's on the staff, the safeties coach, is a year younger than Sean McVay, but his daughter is older than Sean McVay. So, Sean McVay could literally be Bill Belichick's son. And based on the way that McVay has talked about it this week, with the way that Belichick's been texting him after games, it seems like he's like Bill Belichick's other son. He's his third son. He's the one that he's the most proud of, maybe. I don't know. And then Brian Belichick, who's quite a bit younger than Sean McVay, is also on staff, too. We don't really know what he's doing on staff, but he's doing something.
No idea.
Something
what
secretive.
Would you say
Been here for 2 years.
Yeah, that's kind of the way we used to treat Steve Belichick until he took over the safeties group. But I don't know, Brian will probably take over some position group soon because they're losing all their assistant coaches every year at this point. But one last thing, Danny, this is your first Super Bowl you're covering, right?
Right, this is the first Super Bowl actually going to the game. I went to the one in Phoenix and kind of bounced around in the media day and stuff like that. But yeah, first actual Super Bowl experience, so it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, no, it should be a good time.
It's going to be overwhelming. I've never, it's like it's a spectacle, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
Unbelievably loud in that stadium no matter what happens. So, no, it's going to be a fun game. So I think that pretty much does it. Cool. Where can people check out your stuff, Danny?
At theringer.com, and my Twitter handle is @DannyBKelly. Just put out a new little video explainer for the Rams offense that you should check out. Hopefully you like it. And I've got a couple articles coming up this week.
Awesome. And you've got a podcast too as well?
Well, the podcast, we just did our last episode is on fantasy football, so we're doing DFS in the playoffs. So check that out. We I forget who we ended up going with, but we think it's going to be a kicker heavy game maybe.
Ooh,
well, we did a couple different teams, and one of them was like, let's just pick kickers. Because I can see Bill Belichick just wanting to win a Super Bowl with kickers only or something.
Just heavy Gostkowski game. You can keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow Zach on Twitter @ZachCoxNESN. Follow me on Twitter @DougKide. And that will do it for this week's NESN Patriots podcast.